Good morning. Normally about this time of day, I am posting an inspirational quote. It has been part of my daily routine for many years now. But today I decided I wanted to do a vlog, which I haven't done in many, many moons. So bear with me. I'm a little rusty here. The subject matter is very important to me, and I don't speak on it lightly. I don't take it lightly. And I don't share it lightly. It is the start of Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. October is big for many charitable organizations, and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and everybody has their thing that they're passionate about. And for me, it's the fight on domestic abuse. I have written portions of my story before, and I share the really big, the one that changed really everything for me, twice a year, on her birthday and on the day that she was taken. But I don't think that I've ever spoken about it in this sort of format on this platform, nor have I shared the other two parts of the trilogy. But I felt today that I would, to kick off the start of Domestic Abuse Awareness Month, and to hopefully reach somebody who is in that situation and needs someone that can relate and needs someone to listen, and I will be that person for you. I'm gonna try really hard not to get emotional. I usually keep those in check. Those who know me, there's adamantium wrapped around my spine. So, or so I've been told. Anyway, this video is going to be a long one. So if you have taken the time to click on the link in my bio, thank you for that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's start. When I was 15 years old, I'm trying to decide how far back to go with this to start this story. Let's go back a little bit further. My parents divorced when I was 13. And myself and my sister ended up living with my dad, staying with my dad for financial reasons. It was just easier, and all around at 13 you don't really understand what's going on. Anyway, you just don't. So that changes things, you kind of grow up quick when you go through that, and so many, it's not so taboo anymore. It's a common occurrence. Sadly, it is a common occurrence. And when I was 15, my mother was dating this guy. His name is Roger. And Roger didn't like us kids. And we didn't know why. And when you're that, you don't understand you don't get it. You don't understand. And you couldn't figure out what it is that you did or do, but your mere presence seems to anger him. Realized later on that he was one of those, was one of those guys that if I can't have her, nobody can, you know, and so the children should not be in her life because she was his. My mother was a tiny little Filipino woman who stood roughly about 5 foot tall. I'm just shy of 5'8", and was back then. And so when I hugged her, I could rest my chin on the top of her head. And she was just this tiny little thing. Had broken English, you know. Oh, honey. My bestie's probably laughing right now because she hears her voice all the time. I miss that voice, even so many years later. I miss that voice. Try not to get emotional. It's easier when I write it because, you know, I can compartmentalize. I'm very good about that. It's different when you're looking at yourself, realizing that you're talking to many people. Anyway, moving on. Back to him not liking us kids. We're talking throw gasoline in my mother's face, not liking us kids for no apparent reason. We're talking chasing my sister down the hallway with a shotgun, not liking us kids. And the piece de resistance was December 19th, 1990. I grief is a funny thing, isn't it? I went to my mother's apartment because I needed a rosary for theology class the next day. And she had this beautiful one, which I have. Some of you have seen it in my No Hate pictures. It's the one that I hold. It's in a box in my bedroom. Anyway, she was going to let me borrow it. It was Christmas time, and Roger was supposed to be in Texas visiting family. So I thought it was okay to go and pick it up, and a friend of mine went with me. We were singing Christmas carols and New Kids on the Block, which I'm a blockhead for life, and their music, this is just the side story, has when I was a teenager got me through a lot. Anyway, so I walked upstairs, and I can still smell the hallway. I can still close my eyes and remember the dark brown and the dirty carpet and stale cigarette smoke. And my friend stayed in the car because I was just going to run up really quick and get it. And I knocked on the door, and I heard some rumbling around, and the door opened, and it was Roger. And I was not expecting that, or him, for that matter. He looked me up and down. That slow, disgusting, once over. And hollered back over his shoulder in his white wife beater and dirty jeans. And alcohol infused aura. He shouted over his shoulder, "Hey, Maria, your daughter's here." And he looks me up and down again and says, "Pretty one." And he licks his lips and he slowly backs up and sits back down at the dining room table. When you walk in the apartment, there was a brown table to the left, and to the left of that was the galley kitchen, and straight ahead was the living room and the sliding glass doors and the blinds, and then down the hallway to the left, it's the bedroom and the bathroom. I can still see the layout of my mother's apartment in my head. There were beer bottles all over the empty beer bottles all over the table and along the ledge of the window, the cutout of the galley kitchen. And he sat down at the table and he was shuffling cards. And I just stood in the doorway frozen, like, so many thoughts. Why is he here? He's not supposed to be here. Why is he here? And he tells me, "Oh no, just stand there. You know how to play cards?" Still leering at me. "You know how to play cards? I'll teach you how to play cards. Come sit on my lap." I had no words. And my mother comes down the hallway and she's wearing this oversized man's shirt, button-up dress shirt, and nothing else. She might have had shorts on, but she was so tiny that the thing came down to, like, it looked like a nightshirt on her. And tired. She was so tired. And looking back now, I understand that was defeat. It's defeat. And she looked at me and said, "Oh, honey, hi." Smiled, didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, Mom, do you have the rosary?" "Oh, yeah." "Let me go get it." "Okay." She comes back out with it, and I hug her fiercely, and I ask her if everything is okay. "Oh, yeah, I'm okay. It's okay. Honey, you go. It's okay." But I knew that it wasn't. I just got this really bad feeling, and I left there. My gut. You know, when you're 16, what are you gonna do? You don't know then. You know, you feel creeped out and you feel gross, like you need to bathe in bleach, and that objectified, and, you know, all those things that when you're 16, you don't know what that means. You know, I didn't know. I just know how I felt. And I didn't feel okay. And a friend and I drove back, and she kept asking me if everything was okay, and I just kept saying, she said it's fine, but I don't have a good feeling. I went home, and it was about 9:30 at night when I had gone there. I had finished work and headed over, and by the time I got back, it was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. Just lived on the other side of town. And I couldn't sleep. I could not sleep. And I just laid there and I stared at the ceiling, and 3 o'clock in the morning when my dad knocked on my door. I softly said, yeah. And he opened it. And he didn't say a word. I just kept staring at the ceiling and said to him, "She's dead, isn't she?" And he said, "Yeah, honey." You know, Christmas tree lights were still on in the living room, and we had this big chair that sat in front of it, and I remember getting up and walking past him and just sitting in that chair for hours staring at the Christmas tree. And the thing that stands out for me the most about that moment is listening to Jordan Knight, New Kids on the Block was on the radio, and I think it was Christmas Carol, or Christmas song. I don't remember. I have it written down somewhere, but off the top of my head, I don't remember. And right after that, as the sun was starting to come up, we had this big bay window in the back, and the Christmas tree sat in front of it. And I remember the dawn and Louis Armstrong singing "What a Wonderful World." And I had seemingly no tears left until that song came on. Angrily thought, yeah. So, as the story goes, after I left the apartment, Roger beat and raped my mother and left her for dead. I didn't know he had left her for dead and that she was still alive, barely hanging on to life. I thought that she was already gone. I didn't know until just in recent years that she was still alive when he left. But it had no hope and didn't stay alive for long. He took off and retreated and hid in the bathtub of his ex-girlfriend's house until the police found him. Imagine 16 years old. You have a daughter that's 16. If you have kids, imagine this. Your 16-year-old daughter being the last one see their mother alive and being a witness on the stand during his murder trial and having to go through that. I remember clearly looking across the courtroom when I was up on that stand and steeling myself to look directly at him, knowing what he did, and watching. They wheeled that, that cart that you have in grade school where you used to, this is dating myself quite a bit, but with a little TV that you could watch, videos on, school videos and whatever. And they had one of those in the courtroom and had still shots of the crime scene. Whew. Does something to you when you sit like that. So many people watching you, watching the monitor and watching the still pictures, the grainy black and white of the police going through your mother's apartment and having to see her broken and bruised body on the floor. My testimony helped put him away. I had the option of not doing it, of not getting up on the stand. That was never the option to not, that never even I was going to do that. And then nobody was going to stop me. He was sentenced to life without possibility of parole. And it was the first case in Des Moines of domestic abuse, of murder, by domestic abuse that resulted in a conviction of life without the possibility of parole. Although he does try every year. My sister keeps up with that. I lived in fear of that being a possibility for many years, and of retaliation. And there's still that part of me, deep in the recesses that sits hovering like that's a possibility. I push it as far back as I can, but there are moments and days like this that everything comes rushing to the surface. Get help, get out. It wasn't until later when we were cleaning out her apartment that we found pamphlets on how to get help if you are in a domestic abuse situation, as best that she could. I think in the end she just part one of that trilogy that makes me who I am today, for good, bad, or otherwise. When I was 19, I had grown up pretty fast after that. You know, you don't have much of a childhood after that. You try. When I was 19, I met a guy. I was working at Marshall's part-time, and he was doing some off-duty security work. He was 27. And I felt pretty hard for this guy. And I know my bestie's probably sitting there going and mumbling his name or wanting to type his name. Please don't. Please don't. Don't need to bring that kind of attention. I'm just trying to create awareness. This is a story that most people don't know. He had a house out in the country, and it was beautiful. He had this pond I like to go fishing in, and this four-wheeler, and, you know, I thought I was so grown up then. And one night, I had a key to his house, and realized that I was playing house back then, you know, looking for something, I don't know what, but I can analyze that later. People can, you know, read into it, whatever. One night he came home after a shift. I guess it was morning because he worked overnight, and it was a 2-story house. And you would walk this garage, and you walk through the hallway of the garage. See, I remember layouts. And to the right was the living room, and to the left was the kitchen, and kind of catty corner. And there was like this little landing, and then you'd go up these steep stairs, and then there's a bedroom down the hall. And he had I was upstairs in the bedroom, and he had come upstairs, and I can't even remember what question it was that he asked me, and he must have had a rough night or something, or I don't know. I don't remember. There's certain things that you block out, you know, that you remember the horror of the moment. And back then, I have naturally curly hair, and back then it was down to my waist and big curls. If you scroll through my Instagram, you'll see it's probably at the very bottom, but I've posted that picture, my senior picture, a couple of times. Anyway, whatever answer I gave him, he didn't like, to whatever question was that he asked. All I remember in that moment is he wrapped his hand around my hair and dragged me down the stairs. Throwing me into the landing. And I'm back. And I remember being stunned and in pain and crying and ashamed. Like, I don't remember. I just remember huddling in the corner and crying. And I remember him still being strapped. He's a police officer, after all, you know, sworn to serve, protect. And like an idiot, I I stayed like an idiot. I believed his apology. I believed his justification for it. I didn't report it. I stayed. And I was so ashamed and angry, and I was living with my sister at the time, and my parents and my younger sister had moved with my parents. My father remarried. I should throw that in there. And she has been my mom longer than I had my actual mom, and she is everything, and I'm so grateful for her. She's never been a stepmom to me. She's always been mom. Anyway, they had moved to Wisconsin with my stepbrothers, and I stayed back because I was old enough and done with school, and lived with my sister and worked. But I hid it because I had told myself that I was never going to be in a relationship that resulted in what happened to my mom. And here I was, stupid, thinking I could change someone, thinking I could reason with them. I stayed with him even though his ex-girlfriend, or so I thought at the time, who happened to have gone to school with my older sister, confronted me in a Target parking lot and yelled at me and said, "You realize that he's effing you and effing me at the same time?" And I don't swear a lot, so sorry. It's a sidebar. Anyway, I used to swear like a sailor, especially around my bestie, but I don't anymore. I stayed through that. It wasn't until his birthday, I had bought some clothes for him, the place where I worked, and was taking it over to surprise him, with birthday gift and dinner, and I had key to the house, obviously. And so I went into the house and called out for him, and I heard music playing and walked into the house, and he was standing at the kitchen sink, not alone, with a woman, turned out to be a nurse that worked at a hospital that he also did some security work at, and they were seemingly doing nothing but drinking wine, laughing and talking by the sink. And he had the audacity to introduce me to her. So I slowly took my key off the ring and walked up to him and looked at her and looked back at him and looked at her, and I said, "It's very nice to meet you." And I dropped his house key in his glass of wine, and I left. Stupid. I'm stupid. So there's that story. And when I was 22, the weekend after I turned 22, I married a narcissistic sociopath. Let's say that 3 times fast. A narcissistic sociopath. Everything happens for a reason. There were... So 3 parts, hence Trilogy. I can't regret what happened because I have 2 beautiful children as a result of it, and they are everything. care of everything. No, they're just about grown up. My son is 19 and my daughter is 17. And they went through their own hell. And we're repairing all of it. You know, so it's a daily thing. I separated from him twice before it finally took. You know, and I kept going back thinking we could make it work for the kids. It never works out that way. So if you're in that situation, it's easier, you know, on the other side of it for me to tell anybody out there, don't stay for the kids' sake. Don't. You will hurt them in the long run if you do. You will hurt yourself in the long run if you do. The piece de resistance was, I lived with my then husband and my 2 beautiful children in Minnesota for about 12 years. And we moved back to Des Moines. I had no friends and family. I mean, I had friends in Minnesota, but I didn't have any family. That's really support system that I thought could just be there to help me through all of it. In the back of my mind, I knew the inevitability of it, the end of it, of a tumultuous marriage. And I can't say it was always that way because, you know, in all honesty, there were good moments. There had to have been, right? I mean, other than the fact that when we found out we were pregnant with my daughter, he asked me who the father was. You know, aside from that. Ridiculous. Anyway, we were back in Des Moines and we were living with my parents at the time, trying to get settled before finding a place. And one night I was at my bestie's house and we were reminiscing and having a great time. Again, hello, new kids on the block. You know, we're watching videos and all that stuff. And I had been a known flirt with certain someone on Twitter. And I get this phone call at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't even remember. No, it was a text. It's a text from my then husband that said, I need you to come home. And my first thought is the kids. Like, and I had planned on staying the night at her house, at my friend's house. It was going to be an all-nighter, which it was. I need you to come home right now. Why? What's happened to the kids? That's always the first thought as a mother. Fear. Kids are fine. No, the kids are fine. Second thought, what happened to my dad? My dad had kidney disease, and he also has heart disease, and he had several heart attacks. And so health was always an issue. I was daddy's girl, so no, your dad's fine. They're sleeping downstairs. You know, their bedroom was downstairs, and we had the common area, and then our bedrooms were upstairs, and kids' bedroom. I just need you to come home. Well, if nothing is wrong, I'm come home when I'm ready to come home. Like, if you're not going to tell me what's wrong, I'm not. So about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, I decided that I should probably go. The guilt was, and I needed to know what was going on, and my bestie didn't want me to go. She thought she didn't have a good feeling about it. I shall listen to her. Although, again, I'm a firm believer. Everything happens for a reason. We may not know what that reason is at the time, but in time, that reason will reveal itself. I may have said that a few thousand times before because I It is rooted in me. So I went home and all the lights were on in the house, which I thought were really odd. Well, obviously not in the kids' bedrooms, but in the living room, it was like lit. And he was sitting at the computer and he had my Twitter page pulled up. My son knows this story. My daughter does not, but she doesn't pay attention to my social media, so. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, he accused me of, once again, cheating on him. Now, hindsight, I realized that he was cheating on me. Found out in a not so good way. He'll vehemently deny it, but it wasn't even, the ink wasn't even dry on the paper, and he'd met her at work. Moving on. It's a side story. And we got in a fight over, he still doesn't understand how Twitter works. Anyway, we got in a fight over my Twitter feed that, Mel and I were having some fun, and Melanie being my bestie back in Iowa. Just being ridiculous, stupid on Twitter, This was 9 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I don't even remember. No, I do remember. It was Father's Day. It was a Saturday night before Father's Day. June 6th. No, it wasn't June 6th. Doesn't matter, it was Father's Day. It would have been, dates. It was Father's Day weekend. Because it was 5 o'clock in the morning on Father's Day when all of this happened. Anyway, we got in a big fight, and I'm like, I'm done. I was finally done. Like, I had it. And I had gone into the bedroom to change and realized that my phone was sitting on the counter in the kitchen. And I went back out to grab it, and he had it. And he was scrolling through my Twitter feed on the phone. And he wouldn't give it back to me. And I said, where's my phone? Give me my phone? And he held it up and he said, you mean this one? The phone that I pay for? And I went to grab it, and he grabbed my wrist. He had never been physically abusive. It was always a mental and emotional abuse that he chose. It's a skill set. Anyway, no longer affects me. I don't care. But it took me many years, many, 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 many years to be okay with me and to be strong enough to not listen. Anyway, and not bite and not get emotionally charged and afraid. Big fear. Huge. And so I ran downstairs and I woke up my parents because I broke away from his grasp and ran downstairs, and my mom was the first to wake up. It took my dad a little while to get up the stairs, but my mom was up there and trying to figure out in her haze what was going on, and there was a lot of yelling, and I was trying to understand, and my mom said to him, my dad had warned him a few years prior if he had ever hurt me again. And so my mom said, she wanted him out of the house. It was their house after all. And he refused. And she said, if you don't leave him, I'm calling the police. No. He didn't believe her. He thought she was bluffing. Here's the thing. My mom used to work in a jail. She picked up the phone and she called the police. And she had enough wherewithal to ask them to not come with the sirens on, that there were 2 young children sleeping in the bedroom down the hall, and we didn't want to alert them or wake them, scare them. So sure enough, 2 sheriff's cars pull up in the driveway, silent, and the whole thing went down, and my father stood there with his arms wrapped around me and protecting me. Remember that strong, bony arm. He was tall, 6'3", and wiry, but whew, sergeant in the Air Force, just don't mess with my daughter. And they asked him, my then husband, to pack a bag and leave. Don't care where he went, but he needed to leave the property. And so he was escorted out of the house. And several things happened after that, but my kids didn't know that night. They didn't know. Anyway, the trilogy of my life in shades of so much darkness that I'm grateful for it. I know that sounds really weird, but I'm here. I'm here, and I'm lucky, changed and scarred, broken in pieces. Not pieces, places. And it took me many years to put myself back together again. I lost my mom December 19th, 1990. We buried her 3 days before Christmas on December 22nd of 1990. And on December 22nd of 2010, my divorce was final. So, a lot of life has been lived between then and now, and I am happy and content. When you're younger, you chase dreams and you chase, and dreams change. And, back then I wanted to be in the industry. I wanted to be an actress and a dancer and a singer. And I own a dance studio now, and that's a teacher is, it makes me happy. It's that was my gift I was given, and I have to give it back. So that is the way that I give it back. There's so much more to those stories, but you don't need the details. This is, boom, boom, boom. I'm sharing this so that there's light. So that I can give you light in your darkness and know that you are not alone. And if you struggle, or if you have no one, or seemingly feel like you have no one that you can turn to, if you're going through it, I'm here. and I will listen to you, and I will support you, and if needed, I will fight for you. Anyway, my stories, dreams change, and the dream now is for love. Been missing that for a long time. Went through all of that, and I swore off. I didn't. Haven't had a date in, couldn't tell you how long. But, you know, my dog and I haven't had a date in, like an actual real date. Probably almost a decade. Let's think about that, kids. For a second. Do the math. That's right. You're welcome. But it's really by choice. I needed to be okay with me. And I'm happy. You know what? I'm happy. Happy Monday.